Celebrations have erupted across the country after he was shot dead by revolutionary soldiers. At least the administration is saying in a firefight between revolutionary soldiers and Gaddafi loyalists. The images have been broadcast around the world. A spokesman for Libya's National Transitional Council told the BBC Gaddafi was killed in what he called a serious fight between their forces and his supporters after he was captured. NTC fighters in Sirte have been describing what they saw when the colonel was shot.
Gaddafi
was wounded?
Yeah, we get it in leaders' places, okay? Casa laces, you understand? Okay, we kitchen in there, and we shot him, somebody shot him by gun, 9 milli.
Which Gaddafi? Muammar?
Yeah, Muammar Gaddafi.
Where was he shot?
Here.
Where was Muammar Gaddafi?
Shot here in her body, like this. Yeah.
At what time did this happen? What time?
12 and a half.
Midnight?
Yeah, no. Mid-morning, midday. Yes, from maybe...
midnight.
Excuse me, we kitchen. الساعة كم؟ الساعة 12 ولا؟ 12 ونص تقريبا. Yeah. What time? 12 and a half in this morning.
Yes. After midnight. 30 minutes after midnight.
After midnight, in this day.
Okay.
Yeah, in this morning, we are kitchens.
Okay. So he was there.
Yeah.
Describe what happened. Tell me
This
what
is not only many soldiers.
I understand that, but he was there. Tell me what he saw. Tell me what he saw.
This one, watch it how I catch it, Mr. Gaddafi.
What kind of car was he driving? What kind of car was he driving?
Not car, because he was sleeping here.
Right.
And made some bodyguards around the place. We make by strong body elite in this place and catch it, and somebody shot him by gun 9 millimeter.
Right. Who else was there? Musa Ibrahim, Mutasem?
No, that's Bakr Yunus Jabbar and Mr. Gaddafi. He say the general Bakr Yunus Jabbar, this son see it.
The son, Mutasem.
Yeah.
Mutasem's dead?
Yeah. Not Musa Ibrahim. We can't find Musa Ibrahim. Just find Muammar Gaddafi and Bakr Yunus Jabbar.
And this is definite. He saw Muammar Gaddafi.
Yes.
With this eye. Go like this. You hit Muammar Gaddafi with your shoe?
Yeah. This man hit Muammar Gaddafi by his shoes.
National Transitional Council fighters there in Sirte. Well, earlier this evening, President Obama gave his reaction to today's dramatic news.
For 4 decades, the Gaddafi regime ruled the Libyan people with an iron fist. Basic human rights were denied. Innocent civilians were detained, beaten, and killed. And Libya's wealth was squandered. The enormous potential of the Libyan people was held back, and terror was used as a political weapon. Today, we can definitively say that the Gaddafi regime has come to an end. The last major regime strongholds have fallen. The new government is consolidating the control over the country, and one of the world's longest-serving dictators is no more. 1 year ago, the notion of a free Libya seemed impossible. But then the Libyan people rose up and demanded their rights. And when Gaddafi and his forces started going city to city, town by town, to brutalize men, women, and children, the world refused to stand idly by.
President Obama, of course. Well, my colleague Adam Brooks is in Washington. Adam, just wondering what your sources are telling you. It is clear, of course, that Colonel Gaddafi is dead and that he was taken alive. Are you hearing anything that gives any indication how he came to be in that storm drain and what happened that led to his death?
We cannot at this point shed any more light from Washington on this. The situation surrounding those moments is still fairly unclear. As we know, as we've seen, the BBC's own reporting puts Muammar Gaddafi in a convoy which was hit by an airstrike. We don't know who conducted the airstrike. We think perhaps it was a French airstrike. We don't know what role the United States might have played in that. The US is still conducting air operations over Libya in support of the no-fly zone. American drones, we're told, have been particularly active. But from then on in, the picture isn't any clearer in Washington tonight. Apart from that. The Americans, however, do acknowledge that Muammar Gaddafi is dead, as you heard the President saying there, and the Americans have been expressing today the hope that Libya will be able to take itself towards a measure of stability. I think there's quite a bit of concern in Washington over how long that process might take and what a difficult road it might be.
Adam, earlier we had that extraordinary kind of insider view of Hillary Clinton's wow as she got the news. How does this play for the President?
Well, you know, it ought to play quite well, oughtn't it? It's another sort of notch on his a long list of national security successes. However, one has to say there was quite a bit of misgiving. There was discomfort with the Libyan operation, US involvement in Libyan operations, right from the start and all through the summer. There's a good deal of relief in Washington that this sort of turned out okay for the Americans. There's a great deal of relief that America is not being perceived worldwide as having imposed its military will on the Middle East. President Obama was very careful to leave leadership of Libyan operations to NATO and the British and the French after April the 1st. So, you know, I think relief and some pleasure in Washington tonight. It is extraordinary, though, Mike, how far this does not influence or animate or inform domestic American politics really at all at the moment. It simply doesn't move the meter here.
Adam, we're just seeing, I should say, we're seeing those pictures of Misrata because the NTC leaders are going there, we're told, to view the bodies of Colonel Gaddafi, and we believe his son Mutassim. The whereabouts of his son safe still not clear. There must briefly, if you can, be some nervousness in Washington about the chances now of a country 42 years under a dictatorship, 8 months in civil war, whether it can now pull together for a democratic future.
There is trepidation. There's trepidation about the role of the tribes. There's trepidation about Islamism. There is trepidation in Washington about all those weapons that are swilling around Libya. Who's going to get their hands on them? But, Mike, there's some hope too. Small country with great resources. Perhaps it ought to be able to turn itself around, is the thinking here tonight.
Adam, thank you very much.
Our North America editor Mark Mardell is in Washington for us tonight. President Obama has been taking some of the credit for Gaddafi's downfall. Is he right to do so, do you think?
Well, I can see that people would accuse him of trying to have his cake and eat it, but I think it's more a case of he's baking different cakes for different tastes, if you like, different audiences. It's certainly true, he said today, that the world refused to stand by, but it was a close-run thing about America, because many in the administration didn't want to get involved, and they only decided on it really at the 11th hour. And there were lots of Americans who didn't like that. So today he is talking about the strength of American leadership in the world, how America led NATO. But the reason, really, that he took a back seat, that he stood back, let the Europeans do a lot of the heavy lifting, was because he is diametrically opposed to President Bush. He doesn't want to be seen, this is seen as anything like the Iraq War. He's talking about no American boots on the ground. So he's saying that this was done in a way that was completely different, and he doesn't want America being seen as imposing its will on the rest of the world.
Mark Mardell, thank you. Here, David Cameron said he was proud of the role Britain had played in bringing about the end of Colonel Gaddafi's regime. He said Libyans now have an even greater chance of building a strong and democratic future. Our political editor, Nick Robinson, examines Britain's role in Gaddafi's demise.
Libya was David Cameron's first war. Colonel Gaddafi, his first foe. Today, his first real taste of military victory. If there was euphoria inside Downing Street at the news of Gaddafi's death, The Prime Minister was determined not to show it when he stepped outside just moments after the news was confirmed.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Prime Minister Jibril has confirmed that Colonel Gaddafi is dead. I think today is a day to remember all of Colonel Gaddafi's victims, from those who died in connection with the Pan Am flight over Lockerbie, to Yvonne Fletcher in a London street, and obviously all the victims of IRA terrorism who died through their use of Libyan Semtex.
This very street once echoed to the sound of that Libyan explosive, when an IRA mortar fired from Whitehall forced John Major and his ministers to hide underneath the cabinet table. It was a Libyan gun fired from their London embassy which killed WPC Yvonne Fletcher on duty outside. And it was Colonel Gaddafi who ordered the blowing up of a packed plane above Lockerbie. Yet Tony Blair would go on to embrace Libya's dictator and to shake a hand which had so much British blood on it.
You're looking well.
The deal in the desert was a reward, he said, for Gaddafi abandoning his country's weapons of mass destruction and cooperating in the war against Al-Qaeda terrorism. Without the Arab Spring, without this uprising in Benghazi, Libya's second city, who knows, perhaps Gaddafi would still be our friend. But the threat of a massacre here convinced David Cameron of the need to act.
We were in a race against time to avoid the slaughter of civilians in Benghazi. Now, all of us would have hoped to avoid the use of force.
Force was used. Over 3,000 RAF sorties were flown at a cost of over £300 million as Britain joined a broad coalition. Just over a month ago, the Prime Minister and President Sarkozy of France were hailed as the liberators of Benghazi.
Vive Benghazi! Vive la Libye! Colonel Gaddafi said he would hunt you down like rats, but you showed the courage of lions, and we salute your courage.
Tonight, Libyans living in exile filled London's Edgware Road to stage their own celebrations. Words are usually chosen carefully at times like this, but this is how America's Secretary of State reacted when she first heard the news.
Wow. Huh.
Guests at a Diwali celebration in Downing Street this evening heard the Prime Minister reveal his real feelings.
Obviously, Diwali being the festival of a triumph of good over evil, and also celebrating the death of a devil, perhaps there's a little resonance in what I'm saying tonight.
Throughout the conflict in Libya, David Cameron's unspoken message has been, this is not Iraq, I am not Tony Blair. After his first victory in his first war, though, some will ask whether, like Tony Blair, he will discover an appetite for military action. Nick Robinson, BBC News, Downing Street.
Now, world leaders have hailed the death of Colonel Gaddafi as the end of tyranny in Libya. As Libyans celebrated the death of the man who ruled their nation for 42 years, it was widely welcomed. One of the first responses came from the UN Secretary-General, speaking at UN headquarters in New York. Ban Ki-moon called on all sides in Libya to avoid revenge attacks.
This day marks an historic transition for Libya. In the coming days, we will witness scenes of celebration as well as grief for those who lost so much. Yet, let us recognize immediately that this is only the end of the beginning. The road ahead for Libya and its people will be difficult and full of challenges. Now is the time for all Libyans to come together. Libyans can only realize the promise of the future through national unity and reconciliation. Combatants on all sides must lay down their arms in peace. This is the time for healing and rebuilding, for generosity of spirit, not for revenge. As Libya's transitional authorities prepare the way for elections and take the many other steps toward building their own nation, their new nation, including and pluralism must be the watchwords. Inclusion and pluralism must be the watchwords. All Libyans must be able to recognize themselves in the nation's government and leadership. The high hopes sustained through the long days of revolution and conflict must translate into opportunities and justice for all. I have just spoken to my special representative for Libya, Mr. Ian Martin, in Tripoli. The new United Nations mission to Libya is on the ground and ready to assist Libya and its people along the path ahead.
Ban Ki-moon, the UN Secretary General, speaking earlier. Well, Dr. Stefan Wolf is a professor of international security.
UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon there.
So what does the death of Colonel Gaddafi mean to the new Libyan government? Well, earlier today, my colleague Tim Wilcox spoke to the former NTC representative in London, Juma Al-Gamati.
Well, it's hugely significant, it's hugely symbolic. It draws a curtain on a very, very long and traumatic last 8 months. There has been a lot of upheaval. There has been a major revolution in Libya since the 15th of February. For almost 8 months, the Libyans have fought very hard against this evil, brutal dictator, and Gaddafi attempted to kill as many Libyans as possible in the course of the last 8 months. Tens of thousands of Libyans have been killed, many more have been injured, hundreds of women have been raped, and now the Libyans can breathe a sigh of relief and say at last that the era of Gaddafi is over.
Was it easier perhaps for the NTC not to take Colonel Gaddafi alive?
We have said all along as Libyans we would have preferred to catch Gaddafi alive and keep him well and then put him on a trial in front of the whole world, a trial that will be just and meets all the international standards and guarantees, and we wanted the whole world to see for themselves what kind of crimes Gaddafi has been responsible for. But I think the injury he had were severe injuries to the head, so obviously he did not survive the injuries and he died en route to Misrata, but the freedom fighters were very, very keen to actually apprehend him alive and keep him alive.
Imperative now, presumably, is some sort of democratic future for the country. What are the plans?
I think we have passed the danger of Libya disintegrating into a civil war or violence or breakdown or turn into a failed state. I think the worst is over. The worst is behind us. Hopefully from now on there will be no hostility, no violence, no fighting, no killing. It is now the job of us Libyans to move on to the next stage with all its challenges. By the way, now we see that the operation by NATO is finished and there will be no need for NATO anymore, and from now on it's going to be Libyans inside Libya moving on to the next stage of transition. The new Libya is all about underpinning and guaranteeing all the essential human rights, and it's about rule of law and justice.
And what does his death mean for you personally?
It feels to me that this is, after all, a vindication of what I stood for. For more than 35 years, I was one of many dissidents abroad who never gave in, who stood up to Gaddafi, stood for justice, for democracy, for respect of human rights, and we campaigned tirelessly and we worked very hard over the last 8 months. We feel now that victory is ours, as well as victory belongs to every other Libyan. We feel that we have been vindicated and we have come out victorious, but more importantly, it is the values we stand for that are victorious today, values of justice, freedom, equality and democracy, and I am very happy for that.
Tim Wilcox there speaking to Juma Al-Gamati, the NTC's former representative in London, former because he's now going back to Libya. In March, the BBC's Middle East editor Jeremy Bowen was one of a few journalists granted an interview with Colonel Gaddafi. It provided quite an insight into the leader's view of his role and his popularity. Here's what he said when he was asked whether, faced with protests across Libya, he would stand down.
Stand down from what post? What position? I don't have any position. I don't lead Libya. Libya does not have a leader or president or king. Libya is a state of the masses. Power belongs to the people's congresses and committees. Since 1977, I haven't had any power.
Will you leave Libya?
How can one leave one's country? Why should I leave my country?
No demonstration at all in the streets. أنت شفت مظاهرات؟
Did you see demonstrations? Yes, I have, yes.
Where?
I saw some today. I
Where?
saw some in Zawiya. Yesterday I saw demonstrations.
هذه supporting us.
No, they're not supporting
They
us.
are not against us.
Some were against you and some were for you.
No, no one against us. Against me for what? Because I am not president. But they love me, all my people with me. They love me all.
But if they do love
they will die to protect me, my people.
Well, Libya's ambassador to London, that's Mahmoud Nakoua, gave his reaction outside the Libyan embassy in central London.
Today, Libya's future begins. Gaddafi, a black era, has come to an end forever. The Libyan people are looking forward to a very promising future where they can finally start building the free, democratic and just state for which they have fought for about 8 months now. Our people have paid a high price. About 40,000 martyrs have given their souls and their life for the freedom of their country. We appreciate very much the help of the international community to get rid from Gaddafi and his crimes.